dramatic music. My topic is leading beyond imposed expectations. And part one of that topic is expect the unexpected. So when Chow and I were talking about the conference, and we were like, tell your story. How do you even begin to tell your story? In half an hour or one session or even a day? So I had to think about where I wanted to come from, especially when you have different layers and phases of stories like each and every one of us in here. But today, I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about my story from an imposed expectation standpoint. And our objectives are going to be to define the important terms like expectations on imposed, begin to tell my story. And I say begin because that's all I'm going to be able to do today is begin to tell you a little bit about myself, discuss some facts about expectations, briefly discuss 3 effects of imposed expectations, and then I'm going to leave you hanging till part 2 tomorrow. So I found a very good quote that meant a lot to this particular presentation. So entrapped are we in our self-expectations and self-imposed limitations that we fail to see, that we have always had the keys to our own prisons. We're just scared senseless to use them. Now I put senseless, it had a different word, and I'm going to read that again. So entrapped are we in our self-expectations and self-imposed limitations that we fail to see, what we have always had the keys to our own presence. We're just scared senseless to use them. And when I think about different areas of my life, and as far as expectations are concerned, whether I liked it or not, I was already given a label being Myles MunroePodcast daughter, as a PK, a preacher's kid. And so the expectations were endless. They were over and abundant, some were verbalized, some were not. Some were imposed by my parents, some were imposed by myself. Nonetheless, they were there. And so very quickly I learned that, okay, so if I'm not careful, I'm going to be imprisoned by everyone else's expectations. And if I'm not careful, even my own expectations of myself. So when we look at the definition of expectation, there are a few definitions out there. Merriam-Webster defines it as a state of looking forward to or waiting for something. The Cambridge Dictionary defines it as the feeling of expecting something to happen. And other sources call it a strong belief that something will happen to be the case in the future assumptions. As I was even reading and look up and researching expectations, some call it prophecies that people have, whether they speak it over your lives or they have an assumption of themselves, of you in their mind, and they expect you to live up to them, or they expect you to live by them. And somehow they are dashed to verbalize those expectations, verbalize those assumptions of you. And so, Chow and I growing up as kids, in preschool and elementary school, we were always expected to do good in school. We were expected to get good grades. And that started from within the home. It wasn't just from my friends, from our teachers. Our parents, they put great and high expectations on us to do well in school, and there were incentives, which caused us to put in expectations of ourselves and pose those same expectations on ourselves. So he and I strive to be first, second, third, fourth, fifth in the class every year. We got C's and G's or any B's. It upset us because there were these expectations that we were trying to meet. But sometimes when expectations are imposed, that's a totally different ballgame. Because when we look at how they define impose, it means to affect someone by using your authority to establish or create in a forceful way or manner to force someone to accept your belief. So imagine you being under someone's thumb and they're pressing on you and they're telling you, this is what you're going to be. Because this is what I see you as a PK. Or this is what you're going to do. Or this is what you're supposed to say. This is how you're supposed to act. And they're imposing their thoughts of you on you because of what? Because of your name, because of your position. And mind you, your name ain't really so much. My name wasn't really so much my name until I grew up. But that was the name that I was given. I didn't ask for Monroe. I didn't ask to be Myles Munroe's daughter. That's just the way God, my source, made it. But again, carrying that name and being in the position that he was in being his child carried so much expectations and so much responsibility. They also define imposition as to force someone to have the same opinion, belief as you, to give someone something unpleasant to deal with, for something unwelcome or unfamiliar to be accepted or put in place, to take advantage of someone by demanding their attention or commitment. So imagine committing to everybody else's expectation of you. You should not wear this. I remember growing up in the church, and a lot of the older women I could call names right now. I can see them in my face. The older women, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14. And I want to follow my mom. So I put a little lipstick on my mouth, little eyeshadow fooling in her makeup. Why you wearing makeup? Why you wearing lipstick? And so I had to figure out how I was going to deal with that. Even at the age of 13, the age of 15, or the age of 16. Why you wearing high heels? Okay, hold up. Why are you? So I had to figure out very early on how I was going to maintain my respect for these old folks, maintain my dignity, but still not be pressured and pulled in by their expectation of me because of who knows what. And sometimes people's expectations come from so many different places. It can come from their insecurity. It could come from their jealousy. It can come from them wishing they could do what I do now, at this age, and they can't anymore. So I'm very careful. So earlier on, I learned how to manage and how to control others' expectations of me and then also the expectations I place on myself. So some facts about expectations. We are all consumers of expectations, and expectations can be both externally imposed or internally imposed. And like I said, my external expectations started from my parents in the household. You know, as my dad being a preacher, he expected his children to act a certain way. He really did. And sometimes he didn't have to verbalize that. We just knew. Family, friends especially, the peer pressure. You know, they expect you to, are you a PK? Sometimes there are people who actually expect you to do worst as a PK. They don't actually expect you to do dress certain way, act a certain way positively. But because you're a PK has this negative connotation. They actually expect you to be one wilding of their doing, which you're not supposed to be doing. And so again, I had to figure out how am I going to balance both and still be me. Because what you don't do is I didn't want to lose myself. I didn't want to lose the person I was becoming, trying to please everybody else, even my parents. And so then again, I started to now build and impose expectations of myself. And you know, that's hard because that's almost like setting a bar for yourself and not wanting to fail. That's setting expectations. And then sometimes those expectations are set based on others. So my parent, you know, when I was younger, for some odd reason, I was a female into hair and makeup. So I wanted to do cosmetology. And I told that to my dad. And he just thought, to be very honest, he thought it was just, are you crazy? My daughter being a hair salon, doing hair. It was just totally against his religion when it comes to that. And so that's what I wanted to do. But Dad was like, I want you to do something a little more constructive. And I guess he didn't think cosmetology was constructive at that point. So I chose something that I loved medicine. I loved health. But I chose pre-med because it was prestigious for anyone to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, to be any type of engineer. And so I say, okay, I need my animal. And I landed on doctor because it was the one that attracted me the most. So I started pre-med in undergrad. I did 2 years of pre-med, got exposed to other classes and other resources, and realized that, okay, so I didn't really want to do surgical medicine, but I wanted to do the social aspect. And so halfway through undergrad, I changed my degree from pre-med to social work, and I still remained in the medical field. And my dad, he was pleased with that. And to get his blessing, to get that he was pleased, it was important to me. But even if he had said no at that point in my life, I was going to have to say, Dad, I love you, but too bad. I got to do this for me. But it just worked out to where he was fine with that. And it just goes to show, though, that from a certain point in my life where it really, really mattered what people's expectations were of me and pleasing them, and how I was saying, okay, let me go ahead and do doctor. You want me to be big and high and mighty? Let me do that. And it really wasn't what I wanted to do. So eventually I said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this type of doctor, this type of medical field worker. So what is it that really interests me? What was my passion in social work was? So I made that change. Depending on the individual, the external and the internal, imposed expectations are going to carry a different weight. By that I mean for some, the expectations of others are going to really determine who they are, what they do, and what they become, more than if it was the self-imposed expectation. For me, I had to learn to manage both, because they are both there. And to this present day, they are still there. You guys have no idea how nervous I am talking, because I know you all already have expectations of what it is you expect me to say, how you expect me to look, what you expect me to do. And now I've got to figure out, okay, so am I going to meet all those expectations? Or am I just going to be me and do me? And so that becomes most important at number one. And expectations can present both negative and positive effects. I don't think we give expectations enough credit, but whether we like it or not, they really do mold and tend to shape how we act. And some of the decisions that we make throughout the day and just throughout our lives. And so for me, it was just knowing that, being aware and managing that. So earlier on, I learned that I could either allow expectations to make me or break me. I can allow expectations to build me up or tear me down. And I can allow expectations to irritate me so much that I do better or I give up. And I say this irritate because really and truly, it really is annoying when people say things to, okay, so everything just happened recently, 2014. Parents died. And to be very honest with you, I did not know that I would have been able to handle that the way that I did. I actually expected me to just break and fall apart, but I exceeded my own expectations. Number one. Number two, Everybody else to this very day still expect my brother and I to be walking around like zombies, kind of under rock, looking to shovel. You lost your parents. You were very close. It's like, how are you so strong? And so it's kind of irritating and annoying because they have the guts to say that. Some say it to me. And we really didn't expect you guys to be doing what you're doing. And so even that is a motor. It motivates me to exceed their expectations and then just kick it in the butt from the get-go. And why have such expectation? Why just, and it's so hard to say you don't expect anything. But sometimes not expecting to me is just so much better because then you're just surprised. And so when I say irritate and annoying, it's sometimes expectations can be very annoying, but you can use that to make you better or just give up. So I'm a gym rat. I know sometimes I don't look it because I may have fell off. Hey, but nonetheless, I promise you, I'm in the gym all the time. See, you really have expectations of what I should look like. If I say I'm a gym rat, so I have to beat that, and I have to manage that. I have to say, it doesn't really matter what you think I should look like. Nonetheless, I'm in the gym for all kinds of reasons. But in the gym, I learn certain things when it comes to lifting weights and working out daily, and the need to take a break. And when you look at the gym world to the real world, anything that's weighty tears you down, but it builds you up. One thing I learned in school doing sports and my coaches, when you lift weights, and some of you may not know, but when you lift weights, it actually tears your muscle. And then the next process is the repairing. That repairing process is what actually allows it to grow and become stronger. So that tearing and repairing is actually important and vital for building muscle. Anything heavy breaks down, then repair. That's why, and I say this because it makes no sense, me lifting weights if that's a 15-pound dumbbell. So a 15-pound dumbbell with me at this stage is very light. So eventually, my muscle has already built to that particular weight. If the weight isn't heavy enough, it's not going to tear. That muscle isn't going to tear. Therefore, it's not going to repair. Anything annoying causes you to either get rid of it or do something about it. So for me, one of my, not insecurities, but one of my annoyances is extra body fat. So again, I'm in the gym. Why? I'm doing something about it. So it annoys me, the extra arm, the extra love handle. So I figure out let me do something about it to get rid of it. Anything that's a burden makes you aware, disciplined, and responsible. Going to the gym on a daily basis is burdening, but I find it exciting because there is an end that I can see, and I know what's going to happen. And that extra weight that's maybe too heavy on any given day, or that burden or the annoyance of that pain that I feel after lifting 200 pounds on legs the day before, that's a pleasure pain, because yes, I'm feeling it. But in a couple of months, I'm going to look sexy. So I want to talk about 3 effects of imposed expectations. Expectations can convey pressure. And I want to go back to this slide. Let me talk about pressure because pressure is anything you could think about that's heavy, anything that's weighty, anything that's hot, too hot, extreme cold. And expectations can actually cause pressure. And when you think about pressure, you automatically think of something negative. But actually, just like burdens, just like weight, just like anything heavy, you apply pressure to anything. And you're going to get a result that you probably did not expect. So you apply pressure to a rock, and you're bound to get a diamond. You apply pressure and heat the right amount of times to metal, and you're bound to get a sword that can be used for battle. So when I talked about their negative and positive effects of expectations, this is one of the things I'm talking about. So as much as I am to manage the expectations of others, especially, I use those as stepping stools for me to get from one level to the next, because I have to beat expectations. Especially if they're expectations that I use to pull me down. Now, if they're expectations that are in right align where I'm going, then that's good. We can walk together. But for those that are not, I'm not going to fight against them. But I know they're there. So when you think about expectations having pressure, that pressure doesn't have to always be bad. I actually, as I've gotten a lot older, I've used the pressure of expectations to make me stronger, take me from one level to the next, and to show myself first and everyone else that your expectations don't mean more than my purpose and my vision for my life. Another quote by Johann Wolfgang: "If I accept you as you are, it will make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you are capable of becoming, I help you become that." And so again, if I accept you as you are, it will make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you are capable of being, I help you become that. And so I say that says enough in itself. People, again, they have the expectations of you, and some of them are good. My parents knew that I was so much more capable of doing and being what I was right now at that particular point. So they knew that in order for me to have 2 masters today, they had to start from when I was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, pushing me and expecting me to get certain grades in school from that. Because had I continued to fail, or had I started failing from the get-go, I would have never made it to a master's in social work and a master's in business. And so, if I was to make this quote so much differently, it's like a potential purpose quote that my dad would have made. If I treat you as though you are capable of becoming, I help you become that. And so I use people's expectations, as the positive ones especially, as them really expecting me to do well and to do great. And for me to meet that and beat that. Another effect of imposed expectations are they can cause you to misfocus. Now, this is one of the negative effects of expectations. And it's only because, again, for me, expectations, whether they were internally or externally imposed, the most important thing was me managing them. And I had to know what was for me and what wasn't. What was good, what was bad, what was going to kill me, what was going to make me stronger. Because I would run myself trying to meet everyone's expectations, that I would forget really and truly where I'm supposed to be going and the journey that I was on. And so focusing and trying to please everyone can actually misguide you. You're so busy trying to meet the expectations imposed by yourself and others that when you realize you are off course, it's too late. When expectations imposed by others are unrealistic, they can be misleading and cause you to be misfocused. So that's why for me, and I say management, because unfortunately we cannot eradicate people's perceptions and expectations of us. However, we can know that they're there, and we can manage them, which is the key. So I've been learning to manage expectations from we were younger to now. And the expectations that I get older are they're getting more intense. And that may just be because I'm maturing and I'm getting older. And so managing them is important. And I mentioned this earlier. Purpose and vision supersedes expectations. It keeps you focused and disciplined. So for me, before I concern myself with my own self-imposed expectations and the expectations of others, I always go back to the drawing board. What's the purpose for me doing what I'm doing and going where I'm going? And what is my vision? And the third effect of imposed expectations is expectations can cause fear. Now, this can be looked at both negative and positive. But when we talk about fear, you're afraid of failing. And that means you're afraid of not meeting someone else's expectation. I had a great fear of my parents. I knew they expected me to act a certain way. I knew they expected me to get certain grades in school. I knew they had these expectations. And God knows the last thing I wanted to do was bring shame to them or shame to their name. So I tried my endeavor best to not do that. By either two things, not doing wrong, or if I did wrong, don't get caught in all honesty. But you become afraid of failing. You become afraid of not meeting expectations and the expectations of others, but there's nothing worse than failing to yourself. And so I had to make sure that I manage my own expectations of myself. Don't set them too high too soon. Still set them high, but know when I'm really ready to try and reach that. Because if I fail, I don't want a failure to be a setback. So now I'm at a point where mom and dad aren't here. So my rocks aren't here. My foundation isn't there. My backbone isn't there. So you could imagine the fear I have of failing them, even in their death. And so my brother and I are always talking. And we're always talking and communicating about the fact that we just don't want to fail them. We don't want to fail, period. And we don't want to fail them. So imagine us managing that expectation that you guys don't even have. And to wrap it up, we live our lives trying to fulfill expectations, both those imposed by others and those imposed by ourselves. Sometimes these expectations can be daunting, but ignoring them won't make them go away. So again, managing your expectations of others, managing expectations from others and of yourself is the more important key than trying to get rid of them and use them to your benefit. I actually do use expectations to my benefit. I've just learned to deal with them head on and rise to the challenge. So my final point, and when I talk about, we must learn to deal with expectations head on and rise to the challenge. My challenge was and still is if I was given something I didn't ask for, and that's my name and a title, the name Monroe, the title, PK, Myles Munroe daughter, that carries weight. I didn't ask for that weight. That was one weight. I didn't go to the gym and pick up. I said, I'm going to use this, but that's my challenge. My other challenge is I was given something I didn't necessarily want, and that was the baton that I had to accept and receive. November 10th, 2014. And then I had to accept the unexpected, and that was the sudden death of my parents. So now I just expect the unexpected. And there's one quote that I'm sure many of you have heard from a very, very important book. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom then entrusted much, they will demand the more. Thank you. Music playing, music playing, music playing.